Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah amma ba'd. I'm just going to turn my phone to silent so I can see myself but not hear myself. Perfect. Um, so we're going to carry on from last week, inshallah, and discuss how the Islamic economy is structured. But in a nutshell, what we want to do today is one thing, and that is to work out what we as individuals need to be doing in order to convey the beauty of Islam and convey the benefit of Islam on economic and financial matters. And so today we're going to move from the theoretical side of what we've been discussing so far and move into the practical side of things, inshallah. So if we quickly recap what we've done over the last session, we discussed three things. We were discussing the ayah, the very first ayahs of Surah Baqarah. Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. This is the book, in it there is no doubt. هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ, guidance for those who have taqwa, for those who have piety. الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُؤْمِنُونَ وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. Those who believe in the unseen, وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ, and those who establish salah, and those who spend from what we have given them. And we were discussing about this hudal lil muttaqin and this this guidance that has come for the believers or the pious ones. And there's this book, in it there is no doubt, there's this perfect message. And there were three things that we discussed last week. First thing was we need to remember the bigger picture within which we sit. Specifically, we then moved on to financial matters and we discussed this. The second thing we discussed was about how taqwa means we don't just take a view on things. Taqwa means that rather than saying, all right, in theory, it's all well and good to discuss, whether or not it's halal to get a mortgage or whether or not it's halal to maybe get a pension at work. But really, in reality, when it comes down to the crunch, we take a bit of a view on it and we just go for it and we get it. So we were discussing this and how this is extremely problematic from an Islamic perspective, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He asks us, He demands of us that we put what He wants before what we want. And then the final thing we discussed, and that's really what we're going to continue doing today, which is thinking about, all right, so we've got this huda, we've got this guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this guidance is not just restricted to our family lives or our personal spiritual journeys, but it is guidance about how the world should look, how the economy should look, how we should interact in the marketplace. And we started exploring what the economy looks like. And I've actually got a graphic that I've drawn up today, which I'll show you very shortly. And then we discussed what are the issues with the current financial system, the current economy, and what does Islam say about that, and how do we address it? And specifically, we talked about 5 issues, which I'll recap on inshallah very shortly. And then today, what we want to really do today is discuss how can we ourselves as individuals have a tangible impact on bringing about this change. Because let's not forget that ultimately what we're trying to do here is make Islam not just something we do in our houses, but something we also do in our marketplaces and our places of work and our places of business. And that means we need to have something tangible and real and specific that we're going to be working on to bring these things about. Because otherwise, what we're doing here is just a bit of a talking shop and an academic exercise. And that's not what we want it to be. So we um, we talked about what an economy looked like, and my apologies that last time it wasn't as easy to follow as inshallah maybe it will be today. So I'm going to hold up this and it's probably not very easy to read because of my illegible handwriting. Um, but if you can see, we have right here in the middle, this is people who make stuff. And then you've got um, overseas. So you've got imports and exports going on. So that's one big bit of the economy, and this is the heart of the economy, where people make stuff. That's what the economy is really about. Then you've got underneath here, you've got the raw goods that are needed in order to produce stuff. So that's mines and farmers and things like that, and they give stuff to companies, corporates. And then over here, you've got us, so we give our employment to these people who make stuff, and we also buy from people who make stuff. So if like here it's Sainsbury's, or more accurately, I don't know, someone who supplies the stuff from, say, like Heinz ketchup, for example. We both buy from Heinz ketchup, but we also are employed by them as well. We also are employed by them. And then we have the financial industry, and we have these pools of capital, because we have savings. We have a bunch of savings, and we all put it into our banks or pensions or savings accounts. We have these pools of capital that start developing. And obviously, this is a very simplified picture. We've also got insurance over here that might uh, spin off from this side. And insurance is another big pool of capital which would feed into this. As well. And then the financial industry, what the financial industry is doing here is sitting as an intermediary, as a person who connects up the people with the money, with the people who need the money. And in an ironic twist, the financial industry will be supplying money back to the companies, the very companies who employ us and who make stuff that we buy from. And our money, our savings, and our pensions, and our whatever will be going via the financial industry to these companies. And then we also have, um, in the background, we have the third sector, which is, if you can see, uh, this is the not voluntary sector. This is the sector where people do things for free, essentially. And this sector relies on us by donating, but then it also gives us back things. It gives us back services. It gives us back um, our rights. It gives us back lots of money to poor people. So this is the third sector, and this is actually something that maybe we could point to start on, which is that in Islam we have a really a big emphasis on zakat and sadaqah. I mean, the very first passage of Surah Baqarah, the opening of the Quran, هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is saying that those who believe in the unseen, ويقيمون الصلاة, and they do establish salah, ومما رزقناهم ينفقون, and those who spend from what we have given them, and from what we have given them as rizq. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is very up and center, early doors. He's saying that zakat is a very important part of what it is to be a Muslim, what it is to be a muttaqi, someone who has taqwa. And there's a reason for that. There's an economic reason for that, which is that historically in the Islamic economies, almost 33% in certain areas. I remember reading a statistic about Egypt at a certain point. 33% of the economy was run off awqaf, either farmland or industries or services that the awqaf used to provide. And awqaf are trusts that have been given over to charity. And so the third sector, which we want to call it that, produces things like hospitals, schools. It deals with our social services. It might produce libraries. As I said, it might have farms. It will definitely be dealing with people who are homeless and who need food, who need shelter, widows, orphans, that sort of thing. And this is a sector of the economy that sometimes we really overlook. And if this is used strategically, it can have a big impact. And so we'll touch on that later on. But as a nutshell, this is what we're kind of looking at. And there on the top, you can see is the government, the regulators, and the central banks, and various different supranational bodies will be sitting along here as well. So that's in a nutshell what the economy looks like, and that's what we're working with here as a model. So the issues that we discussed, the first one was the nature of money and how that's linked to debt. And I gave a shout out to a website called positivemoney.org, which is a website that's done an incredible amount of research onto this topic and a lot of campaigning on this matter. So do check that out. The other topic we talked about was the financial economy and its domination, the financial sector's domination over the wider economy. Now, as we saw in this graphic that we looked at, the financial sector is a service provider. It's supposed to be subservient to the main purpose of the economy, which is making stuff. And instead, what we have seen over the last few decades is the financial sector has mushroomed enormously, and it has become the reason for the economy. I mean, it has become the driver of the economy, whereas in reality, what is being bought and sold is not really adding much value. It is, in reality, potentially harmful to the economy when it's out of hand, as we saw in the global financial crisis. And there was another statistic how 3%, just 3% of debt and lending it is actually extended to real businesses. And in reality, the majority of the lending that banks do these days is to other banks, is to other financial institutions, which then use this money to leverage and carry on with their transactions. So this is a big problem. Firstly, because of the instability it causes. Secondly, because of the unproductive use of the time of highly intelligent people who go into this area. Thirdly, because it's not really useful to the economy. Fourthly, because it's unstable and it causes things like the global financial crisis. Fifthly, because it's potentially creating a world which is not as fair as it could be. And so we've got a bunch of different problems there. Then we have some, I suppose, legal quirks that really are not a massive issue, but are somewhat of an issue. Firstly, you've got the fact that when you go to court, or whenever there is a delay in a payment from a standard commercial contractual perspective, interest is built in as the mechanism by which to compensate the person. So, for example, if someone's not paid their utility bill, their electricity bill for 5 months, then the company will not just want the payment that was due, they will also want interest for the time that they didn't get that money, because they will say, well, we could have got that money and we could have used it over the 5 months, so you need to pay us interest for that. Now, of course, in Islam, interest is not allowed. And so from an Islamic perspective, we would need to think about alternatives to that. And I'm not going to necessarily sit here and give off the cuff views on that. I'm just flagging that this is a potential issue. And in courts, for example, whenever there is a claim, again, interest is charged on top of that claim, because of course a court procedure will take a course of many months and sometimes years, so interest will add on to that. So that's another inbuilt way that interest is part of our legal industry. Then you have the problem that in Islam, in English law, you are generally not allowed to have penalty clauses in contracts. So if a contract has a clause where if you do not do something, then as a penalty you will have to pay £100 or £1,000 or £2,000 to the other party as a penalty, as opposed to a compensation, then from an English law perspective, that is very problematic. And what that means is, let's say you have a contract to build a conservatory, and you damage that person's conservatory. you would have to pay compensation equivalent to the damage that you have done, as opposed to something much exceeding that, because then that would become a penalty clause and that would be impermissible. Now, the reason why this is relevant is because penalty clauses of sorts would be an answer to the interest ban that we talked about earlier. So if you can't charge interest over 5 months, then maybe you can have some sort of penalty clause. But if you know English law does not allow that, then that's a problem. But anyway, that's quite a technical point. Then we have zakat and sadaqah. We as Muslims give an enormous amount of zakat and sadaqah. I think I read a statistic that approximately £100 million was raised in Ramadan this last year, and I might well be wrong, and it might be a lot more than that. And over the entire globe, billions of pounds is given in zakat and sadaqah, and the Muslims are known, and many studies have been done on this. They are known to be the biggest donators in the UK as a religious group, and so we are giving an enormous amount of zakat and sadaqah, and yet it is not being used often in a strategic and an effective and in a thoughtful manner as it could be. So we'll discuss that, and also from a from an agnostic perspective, ignoring Muslims for one moment. Generally speaking, there isn't as much emphasis and there isn't as much responsibility given to these voluntary organizations that would, in my view, in an Islamic economy, be given a lot more emphasis and a lot more responsibility. So that's another issue. Then the final issue, and this is something that I mentioned very briefly last week, and it is something that I would like to expand on this week, and that's in our economy right now. We, generally speaking, when someone is raising money for their businesses, then they have either the option of debt, borrowing money, or equity, getting some sort of shares in, and there's a choice now that this person has to take. Is he going to follow the huda lil muttaqin, the guidance for the muttaqin? Is he going to go for the halal option or the haram option? That's what the choice that the Muslim faces. Now, the choice, obviously, for a non-Muslim is not that. And often what will happen is you will go for the debt option. And debt has become prevalent and is often a preferred source of funding for businesses, because it's often cheaper and you can pay off the debt, and you don't have to give away any equity. Now, the problem with that is that at a very high level, what happens is that people with money increase that money, and they don't take the risk of a business failing, whereas people who are entrepreneurs or startups, they unfortunately have to take the risk, and they may well be liable not just for the debt, but also the losses that might be running in the business. So there's no risk sharing here that is going on. And just taking a step back, well, what's the benefit of going for the equity approach in the first place then? Well, the benefit, and this is discussed by economists as well, is that you have an alignment of interests where you are going to be investing in a company and your money is linked with the success of that company. Then you are going to do much more due diligence, and you're going to only give that money where it makes sense, as opposed to if you're just going to give debt, and then when you've given that loan to the business, you'll promptly take that loan that you have, that promise of money that's going to come back from this person, package it up and sell it on to another financial institution, who will then package it up and sell it on further. What's happened is you have no interest, or very little interest, in whether or not that person is actually good for that money. You've not done any due diligence into that business, and what happens then is you have businesses who get money who shouldn't perhaps be getting money, and you have that breakdown of due diligence, and so you have less productive or less beneficial businesses coming to the market. And so that's the hikmah behind why going for the equity approach is better. Then the other hikmah is that you align your interests. When people take money and they then start investing that money, and they have bonuses linked to making lots of profits, they will take risks with that money. That's undeniable. So how do you deal with that? Well, the way you deal with that is by getting them to invest their money as well, so their money is on the line. And so when you do that, then there is an alignment of interests, and people are much more secure in knowing that their money won't be lost. So those are the kind of issues that we were discussing. So let's just take a step back so we don't forget where we are. So these are the issues with the economy that we have today. We are discussing about the economy that we have today because huda lil muttaqin, this guidance for the believers, is something that is not just restricted to the house. It's also something that goes to the marketplace and the economies and our places of work. And so, in order for us to be able to implement what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants in these marketplaces, in these business and these economies, we need to know what these economies, what this economy looks like, what this financial industry looks like, what the problems are, and then now what we're going to talk about is what specifically we can do in order to change this stuff, because this is the most important thing. And if we are not going to do this, then it's almost all of the rest of it is useless. So let me start with the easy stuff first. So the first thing is we need to be educating ourselves about what needs to be done in the economy, in the financial industry, and read a few books on this. I can happily recommend a few books on this as well. And then you should be talking to politicians and lobbying with them, so that you are putting across your perspective on this. And by the way, this is a laundry list that I've come up with. It's not exhaustive, and there will be things on there that are applicable to you in your circumstance that may not be applicable for other people. But for those who this is applicable to, you must take this on board. Then the other thing that we must be doing is doing the right job, encouraging our kids to get into the right jobs, get into the right industries. Now, when we looked at this diagram of the world that we live in, there was lots of corporate in there. There was lots of government and financial industry, insurance companies, pension funds, and exporters, importers, businesses. There was less of the kind of industries that we sometimes send our kids towards, such as to become a doctor or to become an engineer or an accountant. Now, I'm not saying at all that these things are, we shouldn't be doing that. What I'm saying is that if you are a doctor, engineer, or an accountant, I mean, I'm a lawyer. That's another very traditional kind of job role. What we need to do is think about how we can use where we are in our position in our industry, and take the message of Islam and the message of what Islam says on the economy and on finance, and take it to the best of our ability in our sector. So what that means in the NHS, for example, I'm not exactly sure, but clearly there is a problem within the NHS about funding, about the pressures on the NHS, and it would be fascinating to have a study of how zakat and sadaqah can be used in a strategic way in order to assist and buttress the NHS. So that might be an idea to potentially think about. But then the core message here is make sure that you or your kids are in the right jobs in order to affect change. And it is possible to be a doctor and have a massive impact, but it's more likely that if you are someone in the financial sector, and obviously if you're going into the financial sector, do drop us a line on Islamic Finance Guru. We can talk you through the kind of jobs that are halal and the kind of jobs that are haram in the financial sector. I know it can be complicated. We actually have articles on this as well, so check those out. But the financial sector, civil service, government, politics, consultancies, academia. These are massive areas that we as a community need to get involved in order to affect change. And if we are not doing that, and if we are not encouraging our kids to go into that, then that's something we need to have a think about. Are we really living up to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala demands of us? Are we really doing that in our current day and age? Are we really living up to what is required? I mean, we've just been discussing why we should be doing that. So I'm hopeful that it's clear. So I hope that the point is resonates with people. Then I suppose the final 2 points, I'm aware that I really don't want to talk more than half an hour. The final 2 or 3 points, spend your zakah and sadaqah very strategically, and think about how that money should be used most effectively. And so this now leads on to the second point after this, which is we have to take ownership over these issues. So we're talking about the economy, and it's quite this vague, big word concept, and it's hard to get our arms around it. And it's very easy to take a step back and think, wow, okay, that's really interesting, subhanallah, and then not really do much about it. So don't be that person. And remember that the economy, what is the economy? Really, it's just a bunch of people interacting with other people, and that creates the economy. So if you, where you are, with all of the interactions that you're taking part in, are sorting things out there, then you are doing your bit. So take ownership over this stuff. And by taking ownership, I mean that if we think that Islamic investment is not something that is really easily available. So I talked about debt versus equity, and if you're a business owner, you're thinking, hang on, there is easily available lots of debt for me, but not very much equity. So how am I going to live up to Islam on that? Well, the answer is that I'm working on this as well. I would like to encourage people to have equity solutions there or Islamic debt solutions available there. But why are you not working to try and solve this problem? Take ownership on these things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He doesn't change a nation state until they change what is within themselves. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. There is not for a human being except what he strives for. Maryam alayhi salam, when she was giving birth to Isa alayhi salam, she went and she lay down under a tree, or took shelter under a tree and leaned against it. And there was some dates on this tree. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said to her when she called out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says to take this date palm and shake it, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will make the dates fall down upon her. Now if you've seen a date palm is not very easy to shake, and if you do shake it, a pregnant lady who's in labor will shake it. She won't be able to make dates fall down. So that's a miracle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But He made her still shake it, even at that point. And that is because you need to take that first step. You need to be doing something in order for anything good to come about. So take that first step, take ownership, and say, I'm the man, I'm the woman who's going to do something about this. So that's Maryam alayhi salam. Yunus alayhi salam in the belly of the whale, he called out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then responded to him. Musa alayhi salam, when he was being chased by the Pharaoh, and the sea was in front of him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he still told him to hit the sea with his staff. If we hit the sea with a staff today, it'll just make a splash. And in reality, it wasn't the hitting of the staff that caused the sea to part. It was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But He still made Musa alayhi salam take that action. And that's because He wanted Musa alayhi salam to take ownership, to do something about it. And so when we are talking about these big issues and these big problems, the concept of money, the domination of the financial industry, legal problems, the undervaluation of zakat and sadaqah, uh, the over preponderance of debt versus equity, and the misalignment of people's interests. All of these kind of concepts that we're talking about, um, we need to be thinking about practically what does this look like, and I'm happy to look at your thoughts and questions and comments on this afterwards as well. But we need to be practically thinking, how do we then deal with this? And then the final point, and this is, I suppose, the most tangible point that I'd like to leave everyone on, and that is that we need to start creating an alternative way of living our financial lives. So rather than just thinking about, all right, how are we going to fix the economy? Um, as I said, the economy is just a bunch of people interacting with other people. So why don't we start interacting with other people in the way that we would like, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more importantly would like? So why don't we start coming up with our ways of doing things in an interest-free manner, doing things in a fair and equitable manner in our businesses and our startups? And what that practically looks like is that we need to be encouraging young Muslims when they embark upon entrepreneurship and trying to add value to the economy, because I think that's a really valuable thing. We need to encourage people and give loans to people when they need those loans in business. I know it's sometimes a risky thing and it's hard to do, but maybe we need to start doing that. And we also need to be encouraging people who are doing things that are quite new and novel and challenging in the financial space. So people like, I've always been a supporter of Islamic banks. I don't think they're perfect, but I think we need to be supporting them and be engaged in a dialogue with them, because they're trying to do something different in a very difficult arena. So we need to be supporting them. People who are coming up with Islamic alternatives to insurance, we need to be encouraging and supporting and engaging with them. People who are coming up with alternative Islamic investment strategies or Islamic investment products, again, these are people that we need to be spending our time and effort to support and encourage and engage with. And of course, what I'm not saying is go in blindly and listen to absolutely everything everyone says. What I'm saying is that it is our duty as Muslims to start creating an alternative economy and an alternative way of doing things. And once that is up and running, and that shows the wider community that actually this is a fantastic model, it works, it can and it can be rolled out to other people, then bi'idhnillah ta'ala, we will actually see Muslims and non-Muslims benefiting from this approach, inshallah. So I'll stop there, and I'll just really quickly summarize the 5 things that I've said that we can start doing to try and affect change here. The first thing is, get into the right job, and if you're in the right job, start affecting change there. The second thing is educate yourself, lobby with politicians, etc. Encourage your kids to become academics. The third thing is spend zakat and sadaqah strategically, and if you don't know how to, then maybe that's somewhere where you can start taking ownership. And that leads to my 4th point, which is take ownership of it and realize that this is not just my problem or IFG's problem or the MCB's problem. This is my problem and your problem. This is our problem, and we need to all be doing something to solve it. And then the final thing is we need to be creating an alternative way of doing business and finance and economics. And this is part of the message and part of the reason why IFG exists. We want to connect up people and act as a base and a forum for where people can help each other do things in the financial and business and commercial realms. So that is the final thing that we should be doing. Inshallah, next week we'll be not next week, in 2 weeks' time we'll be continuing with the tafsir. And أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم واستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. I'll just give a few seconds to see if there's any questions. So if you do have any questions, then please feel free to type them in. And also, whilst I've got you guys, please do subscribe to this channel, because apparently that's a good thing. And also it benefits us, because then inshallah more people start listening to this message and reaching out um, through you. And please feel free to drop us a line on IslamicFinanceGuru.com through our contact us page. We're fairly responsive on that. If you've got any ideas or ways that we can improve this thing, we're thinking about doing a series of podcasts and interviews with Muslim businesses and entrepreneurs and people in the Muslim financial industry about their experiences and how that can inspire other people and how they can learn from these people as well, and maybe a few leading Islamic scholars on these topics as well. So if that's something of interest, then please do let us know and share your thoughts and ideas about what we should be covering as well. So I think there's no questions. So Jazakallah. Jazakallah khair Bilal. So we'll end there. جزاك الله خيرا. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.